You're listening to the vHorizon podcast, covering all things EUC and commuter-friendly chunks. If you wish to find out more or appear on the podcast, please go to vhorizon.co.uk, or you can reach me on Twitter at @dscriven. Don't forget to subscribe via iTunes or go to vhorizon.co.uk and hit the podcast link to subscribe via your favourite RSS reader. Hi, this is Dale. I've got Jason Mattox here from Liquidware Labs. Here to talk to me about their product ranges and their new releases they've had recently. So, hello, Jason.
Good morning. Good afternoon. It's great to be on your podcast this morning.
That's great. No, thank you very much for agreeing to come on. So, I guess to start with, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Liquidware Labs and their history?
Sure. So I've been with Liquidware Labs about 4 years. The company's been around for about 5 years. My history goes back into the 90s. I was doing MetaFrame and Citrix MetaFrame and WinFrame installs, all the way up to Windows 2000, where I broke apart and kind of went into the software industry to kind of develop software to solve all the problems I've seen in the industry from the 90s. And it's interesting to see all the same problems come full circle again. I spent time on vRanger at Vision Core. I spent 9 years in the backup space, kind of evolving the image level backup. And coincidentally, yesterday I just got a patent notification on a bunch of patents that I did for Quest Software, which is now Dell. So it was a fun ride, 9 years in the backup space, and now kind of back into my roots is where I started in the industry, which was in the desktop, whether it was SBC or VDI or hosted desktop. It was always a desktop in the data center in the 90s and early 2000s. So it's fun to solve problems in this space again, something that I spent a lot of time in early on when there wasn't any tools, and I had 10-page login scripts to solve these problems. And then you take a look at Liquidware Labs, and kind of the founder was the same way as I was. We actually worked together in the 90s on those same problems. So he saw the opportunity to make acquisitions, and he made 2 acquisitions, and that's the 2 product lines we have today. Stratosphere was an acquisition of a software called a company called VM Site, and then Profile Unity was Intrigue, and they both happen to be located in the same city in Atlanta, Georgia, around Alpharetta area. So that's where Liquidware Labs was born, and we've been evolving the technology from there because the IP was had a good start and had a good base and was matured to build from to go forward. And we started in the assessment space, which we'll talk about, and then we moved this methodology forward in how you assess, migrate, design, and monitor. And that's kind of the methodology we go through, and it's adopted by a lot of partners and customers worldwide.
Yeah, exactly. That's good. Okay, so in regards to Stratosphere, then, if we get talking about that, there's already quite a big adoption for traditional projects such as Citrix, and now VMware is also making great inroads into it. So there's a lot of understanding from customers from this migration from physical to virtual when you're talking about SBC or VDI. But what about the benefits for Stratosphere when you're migrating from maybe a Citrix SBC or VDI product to a VMware one, or even just a kind of version migration? Because I don't think many people really think about that particular aspect too much. How could Stratosphere kind of fit in with that and assist us with smoothing out that particular migration path?
Yeah, that's actually a really creative question, and I think to your point is definitely missed. When you're going to kind of one vendor to another, each vendor will handle disk I/O differently depending on the software package you choose. If you choose Advanced, Enterprise, Platinum, for example, if I went from VMware Horizon View using link clones, but then I went to Zen Desktop using PVS, the way I/O is treated is completely different in that scenario. Which, as we all know, I/O affects everything, when it comes to user experience. So no matter what you're doing, if it's physical to virtual, vendor to vendor, VDI to SBC or back, or I've seen a lot of Zen App to Zen Desktop lately as well, migrations, you always want a baseline of what your user experience is, how the apps are performing, how long they take to open, how much disk queue you have, how much CPU queue you have, any application hangs you have, and an overall score that we're going to give you. And you always want to compare that score to the before and after and keep that score maintained as you scale out, because you may go from link clones to PVS, but if PVS is misconfigured, it may perform poorly. So you need to understand that before it gets out of hand and have the evidence. And also, as you change, end users hate change. When you come in as an IT guy, and I was always doing this when I would come in and rip out the picture of the kids and put a black background in for MetaFrame, I was like the enemy. So whenever you come in and you change something, a lot of end users hate change. They'll complain because it's different and they don't like to have change. So you have to be able to defend yourself with reports that say the performance of this user before and performance after is equivalent and or better. So I think it's important to note that you always want a baseline performance and kind of applications and overall just compute to understand that you've delivered the right design and say same performance as before or better.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. Okay, so so could you give us a kind of a typical rundown on the type of thing you can actually get out of Stratosphere? So if we put it in day one, how is it actually architected? Is it agent based or agentless, or what kind of how's this score generated basically when you've had it in for the kind of the full cycle of the business month or whatever it happens to be that you want to test your existing architecture on?
Yep, sure. So we've got OVF deployment. There's two OVFs, and those are virtual appliances. We also have deployment options for Hyper-V, VMware, and also Zen as well. And we have a generic OVF if you want to deploy it to like a KVM or something else like that as well. And there's two virtual appliances. One is the front-end user interface and also collection of these metrics. And the other one is a database. So we break them apart to allow for higher scaling. Then there's an agent that goes onto each operating system, whether that be Linux or Windows. And this is one thing that I do like to note. We've been supporting Linux operating systems or Linux desktops for years, and we have a handful of customers actually running Linux desktops kind of unmanaged from the broker, like a KVM type scenario. So now that Linux desktops are becoming optional in VMware View and Citrix Zen Desktop, we've already have agents to monitor user experience on Linux desktops today. So that's exciting for us to kind of be already in that realm. So the metrics, we have an agent that sits on the operating system, and it collects a set of things from WMI, but also it collects a set of things that are custom unique to us that we've developed. So we can tell you how long it takes to open an application. We can tell you if an application goes not responding, how often that happens, because that'll bring down your score. We can tell you CPU queue, disk queue, IOPS, all those different type of metrics, display protocol performance, how much USB you're pulling, what your image quality is. That's another good note if you're moving from one display protocol to another. If you've got users overseas and you're going from the States to EMEA or to India, something like PCIP may not perform at 300 milliseconds latency where ICA will. You'd be able to measure that and see that within Stratosphere as well. So there's that, and there's one other piece that we do have which gives us a lot of visibility into the network, is we have a network station that sits on the virtual switch, and it watches the packets as they go past and reports on them. So you know where your users are going. You also know round-trip latency times for these packets. So if I have an application that uses a SQL Server, I can actually see how long it takes to acknowledge that packet round trip for that application if I put SQL Server traffic into my include list of things I want to monitor. So we have a lot of visibility into what affects the user experience on the desktop, from in-guest metrics to hypervisor metrics as well, and then also relating network traffic and display protocol that goes along with it. So that's kind of a quick high level. And one feature we're adding shortly for next month's release, hopefully I don't get in trouble by marketing for saying this too early, is we're giving a really comprehensive login breakdown. And this is something that it plagues people. They don't know how long it takes group policy to run. Each group policy, how long does it take to run? The processes involved during login, which ones are taking the longest to execute. So we're providing a really high level, medium, and then really granular engineer level breakdown to the login so that you can understand what is taking the most time during your login, because everybody wants that utopia of less than 10 seconds or less than 20-second login. You've got doctors that want to just tap, connect, so it's something that we see as a problem, and already the betas and demos we've shown have gone over really well with the industry, that people that have seen it.
Yeah, definitely. That's certainly a very important thing to kind of understand. Really, it's nice that you've also been supporting these Linux desktops for some time, because obviously Citrix and VMware are making a lot of decent noise at the moment about actually being able to support some versions of Linux, and it's actually in some industries such as engineering, it's quite an important feature, and will be a big win for some VDI and SPC products. So it's good that you can pre-monitor that and also reap the benefits of improving the actual native experience of the staff when they log into their new virtualized infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and you're right. You hit the nail on the head there too as well. One of our newest customers for Linux desktops is a semiconductor manufacturer. So yeah.
Yeah, excellent, good stuff. So moving on again to FlexApp and Profile Unity then. I understand that the latest release, you've been kind of partnering with Citrix quite heavily on some of the features here, because it's obviously combating VMware's particular inclusion into their Horizon stack, particular feature called App Volumes that we recently acquired last year. So could you tell us a little bit about FlexApp and Profile Unity and how they kind of work together and sort of help us get to this nirvana of technically a blank template VM and everything kind of clicks into it after the event as such?
Yeah, definitely. So definitely VMware is going after the Citrix customer base and trying to plant that Trojan horse into the account by providing application layering or their WEM strategy for a Zen desktop or Zen app customer. And obviously from a Citrix perspective, or even the customer's perspective, they may not want another vendor, another platform vendor, trying to lure them into a whole new broker. So we have an alternative, option where we're agnostic when it comes to UEM and profiles, and also application layering. I can take an application layer I built and use it on any hypervisor, any broker I want, and the same goes with the profile. So when it comes to the profile pieces, we have just profile management, where we capture the entire profile and we make it portable, and we can bring it from one operating system to another, whether that be Windows XP, Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, 2000 Server 8, 12, 2000 Server 3, and then the new Server 12 when it comes out. And part of the technology there is that we can break up the profile into pieces and parts, and it allows us to speed up the profile, but it also allows us to be granular about what we do with the profile based on the environment and the user and where they are and where they're going. The filtering system, context-aware filters that we have over 300 different ways I can make a decision how I want to handle the profile. So, for example, we break apart pieces of the profile from Windows 7 to Windows 8 that are incompatible, because once Windows 8 upgrades them, you can't go back. So we can continue to do that and provide these kind of out-of-the-box templates to allow you to coexist during your migration stage as you remove the legacy operating systems. Microsoft was really bad on Windows XP to 7 that there was no option. Well, now you can go up in most of the operating systems, but you can't go back. So we're still providing value there. And then when it comes to UEM, user environment management, shortcuts, drives, printers, elevation, we run with elevated rights, so we can modify HTLM, we can modify program files and applications that write outside the profile. We can back up and restore settings that are stored outside the profile without making the user an administrator. And application rights management, all of those type of modules that we have in the product also apply to these 300 different ways, context-aware filters. I just had an email from a partner this morning, and the subject was, I love Profile Unity. And it was because he was able to build a filter that said, based on the connection broker you come from, I want to make a decision to do something different with your environment. And he was able to do that based on the different ways we can identify where you're coming from, who you are, and what you're trying to do. And then Profile Unity is kind of an automation engine. It's automating a lot of these different things in the environment. So it executes a lot of the FlexApp code and gets kind of the FlexApps and the layers brought in. We've been doing layering since 2013. Traditionally, it was not using a virtual file system or virtual registry. It actually made modifications to the registry, and it uses links in the OS. Now we've evolved that technology where we have a filter driver for registry keys, files, and directories. And we've also, kind of sped up the entire process, and we've now support VMDK delivery. So, to support a VHD-based layer, that's actually really easy for us. It's inside the guest. So it works really well in cloud environments where the customer has no virtual center access. And it works really well if the network's healthy. You can use it as an alternative because our console can literally be shut off, and our policies and configurations are replicated using your NetLogon file share, which is already replicated, already scaled. And you can shut the console off, and we can deliver UEM, profile, and VHD-based layers, and even an entire profile on a VHD called Profile Disk. But then if you take one step forward and you go, well, my network's only 1 gig. I can only get 200 users, per file server that way. I don't have 10 gig. But I do have 8 gig, or I have some, faster fiber channel or storage. I want to use a VMDK option instead. What we've done here is we've kind of done something that's never been done in the industry, is we have point-and-click clustering. I can take Profile Unity and install it 3 times, and it will self-cluster, self-replicate the database, so there's no need for an F5 load balancer. There's no need for modifying or hacking the registry to get redundancy, and there's no need to bring a SQL server to the table. We handle everything for you, and the reason we have to be in a cluster is we have to know when you're logging in to talk to Virtual Center to say, hey, this user gets this disk with that layer in it, and attach it, and then we can attach and play the layer back into the operating system. So that point-and-click clustering is big for us. We're really happy that it's moving along the way it is. Beta 3, coincidentally, will be going on the website today. Today's Friday the 17th. So it'll be for public consumption and public download. We've had over 100 beta participants, and most of them have been active and given feedback. So it's been a really good beta program. And we're really excited about, the infrastructure and the architecture design. We're also really excited about our compatibility rates, and we do everything at the user level. We don't have any reason to do it at boot. We have the option to do applications at the boot, but it's all user-driven. The whole point is, with layering, the goal, the utopia is I have an image that's universal for everybody, and there's really nothing in it. And then I can assign based on users. So I can have engineering, marketing, sales, accounting, all using the same image, but at login, all the application layers are snapped into the operating system. And that's the utopia, where if you look at other layering products, they have to go to the machine level for different reasons, or they're machine level in general out of the box. So we're really excited about that kind of technology and our success rate with complex applications like AutoCAD and Creative Suite 5 and 6, and just all those different type of applications and drivers and services and all those things we can work with. So really excited about this technology.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's certainly a good base. One of the things I really like about how the way you guys architect this particular technology is the fact that it is agnostic and does have this extra layer of flexibility. So if you have any other vendors' products that seemingly do similar things, then basically you've got this issue where you're locking yourself into possibly a particular hypervisor or a particular connection broker type, or a particular vendor. You're actually locking yourself in another infrastructure area as well as just the application. So the fact that you can do you're hypervisor agnostic is obviously a great bonus.
Yep, definitely. And there's also a push for HP's Moonshot technology driven via PVS. And that's a big one for us too, because we can use a VHD for us as inside the guest. It's hypervisorless. It doesn't matter. So HP is looking at doing that in their offerings using FlexApp on their Moonshot technology as well.
That's cool. That's good stuff. Okay, so what about... So if we've done our first bit of due diligence, we've done the initial monitoring, we've right-sized everything when we moved along, and we've got our utopian blank virtual machine that everybody gets, and then you've got all your profiles and things clicked into them. What about the ongoing monitoring? How can you guys help out with ongoing monitoring and making sure everything stays as you would want it to do, and it doesn't take a nosedive slowly over time?
Yeah, the ongoing monitoring is really important. But sometimes it's like trying to sell car insurance to a 12-year-old, because they don't know that when they get a vehicle that they need insurance, and sometimes some customers, just don't see the value yet. They've built the infrastructure so high, they put so much resources and memory and CPU and disk in it, it's important to understand that it's not just an insurance policy. It's ongoing maintenance to understand your environment, understand user behavior, and understand that things change over time. Infrastructure changes, user behavior might change. So you need to understand that your users are always getting the user experience they deserve and need going forward. And the same metrics I talked about earlier go into the score of what the user experience score actually is. And again, as you scale the environment, it's good to understand, especially because if you kind of topped out, ongoing is important. But as you're scaling is even more important, because you want to understand if the user experience is starting to drop as you've added too many users to the infrastructure, and it's time to add more compute or more IOPS or more I/O to the infrastructure, so you don't drop that user experience so low you start getting help desk calls. Again, it goes into monitoring CPU, monitoring disk, monitoring memory, monitoring application load times, login times, monitoring network traffic, and kind of connecting all the dots to give you that user experience score. And it's really important that you do that going forward. I think the most important piece for people to understand, especially if they've come from traditional desktops at their feet, in that environment, it's distributed compute. And there likely isn't a lot of problems in distributed compute because you have dedicated IOPS for you, dedicated CPU memory. If anything, it's going to be an infrastructure problem in the back end affecting your experience, not the direct distributed compute. Now I've taken all my compute and I've centralized it. So it's even more important, because traditionally nobody installed monitoring products on physical machines. There was never that big of a need. Now there is a need because you're sharing compute in the back end and the infrastructure in the data center. That's, I think, most important thing to explain to customers so they understand kind of that situation, how the dynamic is really changing. Those customers that might have been an SPC, server-based compute environment, might know that a little better because you're centralizing compute in that situation as well. So there's an education process, I think, that goes along here to help customers understand, that the situation is different.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, especially these days, that people are starting to switch on to that a little bit more, but there's still, sort of a lift and shift mentality, isn't there? Still quite prevalent around your virtual desktop infrastructure, especially if you're going directly from a physical to a virtual infrastructure, maybe with thin clients on the desk and all that kind of stuff. I think there's still ongoing monitoring, and the initial actual phase of finding out what is actually happening on your endpoints, not what you think is happening, but what is actually going on, is still missed or misinterpreted to some degree.
That's exactly right.
How do people actually get on to looking at these products and kind of investigating them a bit more and seeing if they're a fit for their particular organizations?
Yeah, that's one thing that we do versus other vendors as well, is you can go to our website and there's a big download option in the top header. And you can just fill out a quick form, let us know who you are, but you will get direct download access immediately. There's no waiting, there's no qualification. You can download all the products, Stratosphere, Profile Unity, FlexApp, and even our FlexIO technology, which is IOPS acceleration. You can download all those products. Also, if you don't quite have the time to install them and set them up, which generally our POCs are less than an hour, proof of concepts are literally less than an hour, and some vendors take days or weeks or even months to set up. You can test drive the products as well. We actually have live UX data from Stratosphere from our production environment for all of our users worldwide, rolled up into a publicly accessible information that you can look and see what you would get if you were to install the technology in your environment. And then also the Profile Unity Management Console is fully accessible via a test drive as well. Just fill out a couple of information about yourself, and then you'll get credentials and a URL, and you're off to the races.
Okay, that's cool. That's nice that they don't have to physically install it in their environment or set up a lab to actually kick the tires of it, as it were, and see the benefits straight away. Yeah, no, that's great. No, well, thank you very much for talking to me, and it's been a pleasure to have you on the line, and very much appreciated.
Definitely was a good conversation. I enjoy these conversations a lot and having these tech talks.
Yeah, no, that's great. And if you want to find out more, I'll post the links up to Liquidware Labs on my website. Thanks very much.
Thank you.